Hey guys, elsewhere here. Uh, totally winging it today. I kind of came up with a game plan, and I'm gonna see. I even made a couple little notes here. Um, it's springtime, and girls gotta just slim down. Maybe even just a single size. I don't actually really care about my size, but in general, I'm just I'm a little on the heavy side, and it's better to just handle that now, and I'll feel better going into spring and when the weather gets nicer and we're not wearing as many layers, of course. So anyway, for those of you that don't know, I have a really long history with studying different fad diets, meal plans, disciplines, you name it. And basically, what I've gathered from all that is I've just boiled it down into the things that I've extracted that have really worked for me from certain just maybe research I've done or information I've gathered based on health and nutrition and everything from my weight to bodybuilding to just all over the board. And so going into spring now and starting to put, these are things actually to some degree, these are things that have been so effective that they never really leave completely. And the way I like to explain it is I kind of call myself a 90%er. I'll practice any discipline to the best of my ability, but to expect 100% out of me or 100% out of my results just isn't realistic. Okay? So, and it's totally different for everybody. But, so today, I'd say this discipline is wrapped around, I wrote at the top of my page, getting to keto, because I did practice keto. I practiced it it's actually the last discipline that I practiced. I was on it for really strict and honestly, probably a year and a half, and then just slowly kind of weaned myself back onto carbs and a regular diet again. And I'd really say it's been in the last year and a half that I haven't practiced any discipline really of any kind, but even in that, and it not really being a focus in my life, there are just certain things that I still just do every day. So I thought I'd share some of those with you, and then how that's going to play into my springtime plan. So getting to keto, and in general, if my goal right now, it's not the number on the scale, it's my BMI. My fat content is too high in ratio to my muscle content. My muscle content is good, but my fat content is high. So when we're talking about burning fat, one thing that's really important that I think most people know, but I still think burning fat is just this horrible misnomer. Really, weight gain comes from fluid retained in your fat tissue. Okay, and so when you go on, start a new discipline, or your entire goal is to reduce your fat, which means inches, means the mirror is your friend, the scale is your enemy. It doesn't matter how much you weigh, you're actually looking at your physical size. Anyway, because that's my goal right now, the most effective way to do that, and you can research this, it is just absolutely everywhere, and it doesn't matter if you are just a person trying to maintain some level of health, or if you're an athlete or bodybuilding or a fitness expert, or just an average person like me. This just rings true, and I put it to the test. And number one, most effective fat burning discipline is to make the first hour of your waking day a low intensity cardio activity. And the example that's given, and probably the most tried and true, is you just want to go out for a walk, and the pace is kind of like you're not in a hurry, but you're walking with intent. You want to keep a little momentum, but you're not actually trying to break a sweat or get hot or have flushed cheeks. It's just a rhythm. So, and I'll tell you, and it didn't even take 4 days of me doing that every single morning to notice very small changes in either the way my clothing was fitting or the way I was seeing myself in the mirror. I could actually visibly see that this discipline was working. So, and then the partner to this discipline and my variation on the discipline that works for me. So my lifestyle doesn't really permit me to say leave the house and go on a long leisurely walk, and I don't have a treadmill, I don't have a stationary bike, I don't have other ways of getting cardio in my house. And so my modification, which is kind of a little, it's just been the greatest trick for me, and I love it. And if if this works for you, it's just great. I do my ab and core work, so I get down on the mat. In my case, I have an old massage table, so I can actually just, it's hip high, and I just get up and lay down on that. It makes it very easy to go from standing to laying. And usually I can basically crawl out of bed from a laying position and end up on the table in a laying position. And that's how I wake up. So I'll do my core exercises for approximately, you can fluctuate your intensity. For a lot of people, it might even just be the discipline of laying on the mat and just being able to lay flat and maybe do some decompression exercises, maybe do some range of motion, maybe just do some breathing exercises. Just breathing exercises on their own without the physical walk are still a really great way to get some cardio without having to modify your entire first hour of your day. So anyway, so my method is to get down on my mat for an hour, go out for a walk for an hour. If you have access to a treadmill or something stationary that you can get on in the morning, just get your body moving. Hand in hand with this particular discipline is drinking approximately an 8-ounce glass of water with maybe a tablespoon of lemon juice. And the reason for this, they say to drink it before you go on the walk. And the reason for this is that the lemon water it helps lubricate our joints. We have ganglial fluid, and our I can't think of the word. I'll come to it. But anyway, it's our suspension system, and the ganglial fluid keeps everything lubricated and working smoothly because it's our gaskets. It's lubricating our gaskets and our joints. And so having that going on while you're going for this very low intensity exercise, and just, your joints are moving, but they're not really under any pressure or stress, and your body isn't being overworked to the point where it's actually feeling the need for calories. All those calories are in that fluid and that's being stored in the fat. They say you store your fat and your calories. Okay, it's in fluid. Fat cells just expand and contract. They don't multiply. Your fat cell, you don't actually lose volumes, mass, fat mass. You're losing whatever that fat cell is containing. So that's where those calories are coming from. They're coming from the stored calories in your fat cells. So anyway, there we are. Lemon water first thing in the morning. My variation on the lemon water, lemon water gives me heartburn. And not only that, if I tried to drink 8 ounces of water and then go for a walk for an hour, I guarantee you I'm going to need to void my bladder before I get home. And so those are my two issues. One is that it can give me heartburn. And heartburn can be induced by increased activity or any kind of lifting, anything that's going to cause your diaphragm to contract. It just pushes on the stomach and kind of sends those acids up. And so doing the exercise while you have that, for me anyway, it creates a little acid reflux. Same thing with the ab work, the core work that I do on the mat in the morning. But so what I do for that is I take a thyroid medication. It has to be taken first thing in the morning on an empty stomach. So far this discipline's pretty much working for me in regards to other things. But what I do is usually I have to wake up at somewhere between 4 and 5 in the morning and I have to void. And so what I do is I have my lemon water sitting with my thyroid medication, and I take that and drink my water, and I know I'm good for a couple hours, or I'll get up for the day, basically the next time I have to void. Now my bladder's empty and my stomach is empty, and so I can feel free to do my core exercises without worrying about acid reflux, or I can feel free to go for that hour walk without having to worry about whether I'm gonna need to squat in a bush. So the other thing that you could do is you could do 4 ounces before you go for your walk and drink the rest when you come home. I did try that, but I found that if I just did it earlier, and part of it's psychological, you know that you did it and you know why you did it, and so now you feel, okay, my joints, you know, I'm ready. And so anyway, the 1 hour cardio and the lemon water. Second on the list is hydration. And the reason I like to talk about hydration is, the reason I put such an emphasis on it, besides hydration, is that it's an opportunity for us to introduce the electrolytes that we need in our body, and that helps us regulate our sodium levels, our blood sugar levels, and can keep us a little more on the satiated side. It helps to reduce cravings. So if you have just a 1/4 teaspoon of salt in your, say this is a tall boy, it's 21 ounces, a little 1/2 teaspoon of salt in here. This one's cloudy because I happen to mix some coconut water in. But when you think about hydration, think about things you can add to it that aren't really going to add any calories, but they're going to benefit so you want a little sugar, a little salt. You can actually buy electrolyte powder and it will be measured for you, and you'll know exactly what your intake is of that item. For electrolytes, like I put a cup of coconut water in this 3-cup glass, so it's a third. And I would only do that once a day. So I might make this whole big concoction and I'm going to drink this, but I'm probably going to equal this with the same amount of probably just plain water throughout the day. But keeping your electrolytes sort of keeping them balanced, not only balanced but at the proper levels, it goes a long ways with things like cravings and more. You just kind of notice that your eating isn't quite as sporadic. You might tend to, it's easier to opt to cook a meal from scratch at home that's going to take an hour to prepare if you have this in your life during the day. If all you have is water, or if your system is depleted in those ways, when you go home, you are more apt to pull something pre-made from the freezer, or maybe you know that you're going to do something that's much quicker and much easier because you not only are you actually physically hungry, but now you're actually craving, and it's really influencing what you're about to put in your body. So anyway, the hydration, love it. Just make sure that you're keeping your electrolytes happening. You want your, when I talk about electrolytes, I'm mostly talking about potassium and magnesium. And those come in all different forms, and there's different ways. Coconut water is a natural one. We don't need to be overly satiated with this by this. It's just a supplement so that those cravings aren't so strong when we go to prepare our meals. So because we're on our way to keto, right? And so we're trying to satiate those cravings that would lean us more towards a high carb dish in the evening, okay? Because we're going towards keto. Doesn't mean you're not going to eat it. It's just going to mean that you're coming from your baseline of being satiated is now your cup's already part full, so you're not going to eat it during the meal as much. The other thing is, this is totally, if you incorporate if you balance out your electrolytes and you get your hydration right, you won't even have to concentrate on your portion sizes or the things that you're eliminating, just simply because you'll just feel so much more satiated on such simpler foods. And so that is a really good tie-in to the keto diet, where you really are making a choice that involves self-discipline to reduce carbs to almost non-existent. So anyway, hydration. Number 3 is you want your first meal of the day. This goes to intermittent fasting. This is what we're going to talk about now. So the bare minimum fast that your body needs to actually compartmentalize all of the nutrients that you have put in, whatever you put in your mouth, it takes 9 hours for the last thing to go wherever it is going to go and do whatever it is going to do. So you know that your system is basically running on empty at that point. So 9 hours, okay, well, we sleep for 8 hours. So honestly, you've heard don't eat too late at night. Breakfast is the most important meal of the day. Okay, so, and we all know break, fast. It's the first meal of the day, and usually you haven't eaten in at least 9 hours. And 9 hours is very average. You don't have to reach that goal. If you can't not eat while you're sleeping for 9 hours, then you are going to have to, there's a different discipline for that, and we can actually talk about it, because keto is not the only one that I know about. We could talk about, there's a carb backloading program, and rather than being based on intermittent fasting and the low intensity cardio, it's actually based on a lifting program. And so you could do a lifting program if you're converting and you want to build that muscle. If you're trying to build muscle, I don't actually recommend keto completely, but we could go into carb backloading, and you could see why. Maybe, at least for me, that was my preference. But anyway, right now I'm strictly talking about reducing my fat mass. And so that's why the 9-hour fast. And then one of the first rules of keto, when you're trying to kind of break that carb cycle and not be so carb dependent, and as you're kind of wrapping your brain around the idea that, you know, our first go-to is always, well, what do you mean I can't have? Well, you can have it. You can eat it whenever you want. That's totally your choice. So not having it, it just takes the brain psychologically, it takes a little while to get into that. And so with the intermittent fasting, one of the things you can practice is your first meal of your day. So with the 9 hours, you can do a gradual increase, of course, right? So it gets you even further into intermittent fasting. We can discuss that more later, but right now I'm talking about beginning. This is like, this is my, if all I do, even if I only do one of these things, I'm gonna see results. And the more I combine these things and I'm able to follow this, then the better off I'm gonna be. So at least 9 hours, and then your first meal just doesn't include carbs. Okay, so you just want fat and you want protein for that first meal. Just start there. Anything after that's fair game. If you can make it 9 hours without eating, including your hours of sleep, and you can make the first thing that you put in your mouth a fat and a carbohydrate, you are intermittent fasting. I mean a fat and a protein. No carbs. After that, I would, if you can do those things consistently and find a way, that I actually spent the first month just trying to do these things consistently, and that's how I figured out that the walk wasn't going to work for me, but that I did have an hour that I could use for the exercise. The hydration, I can't specify enough. You don't want to overhydrate, okay? A lot of people think you need to you don't need a gallon of water a day. You just don't. Shoot for, depends on how much water you drink right now. Shoot for 1 liter. I think that's basically what this is. And just make sure that even if this is all you're gonna drink all day, then honestly, if you want to get the electrolyte tablets or you want to do it at home, you could there's this little, it's a lemonade mixture that I do, and it just has, you've heard of it all before. It has a cap full of apple cider vinegar, a cap full of maple syrup. Today it has coconut water in it. Sometimes I'll steep a tea bag and give it some flavor. I like chamomile and I like green tea, and so those are usually my go-tos. So you can do it at home kind of naturally, or you can find powders or supplement, and they taste good too. You know, you can get fruity flavors and stuff like that, but that's just really important. And then as far as, not only are you trying to decrease your carbs, but you're trying to uptake your fat. And fat can be a little bit tricky And I just wanted to say, in that regard, at least for my discipline, I call it broad spectrum. I use bacon grease, I use heavy cream, I use grass-fed butter, I use coconut oil, I use ghee, I use duck fat, I use sesame oil, olive oil. Just get it in. Just get it in. That's where you want that's your satiating calories that are going to keep you from feeling like you're starving because you're not eating your potato tonight. And speaking of the fats, one of the ways that I get that that really works for me is once you start getting your fat intake where it needs to be, and you're regulating your protein, it's not a high protein, you're kind of mid-grade protein, and protein is probably the one thing, it's the macro that you measure because it stays constant. It's based on your BMI. You can do the math. There's calculators out there. There's BMI calculators, and they will tell you the percentage of each thing that you need. And basically that protein number doesn't change. What changes is you just absorb all your carbohydrate calories into fat calories. And then you just try and get those two things any way you possibly can to meet those numbers. And then in addition to that, one of the things that you have to do, because it's a high fat diet, you have to eat greens. You have to get greens into your diet. And what the greens do is they help detoxify and cleanse the liver, because your liver is what processes the fat that you put into your body. So we have to support and take care of the liver. 7 cups of greens a day. There are different ways that you can do this. You can have a nice fluffy romaine salad if you want. You can have things like coleslaw. You can cut up cabbage. You can cook your greens. Where it gets a little convoluted is if you have 7 cups of spinach in a Costco container and you bring it home and you cook it, you really end up with about 2 cups cooked on your plate. And that's where you talk about things like condensed greens. Okay, so whatever you think that 7 cups, no matter how you can get that into you, that's what you're trying to do. And that can include any cruciferous vegetables, really, but the leafy greens. And the reason I bring this up is because as you get further into the intermittent fasting practice, and as your non-eating time starts to expand, one of the things that I really love is when it's my meal time, I can just take, in fact, I'll show it to you. This is my salad bowl. It's also my popcorn bowl because I'm low carb, not no carb. Anyway, so I add most of my fat to this salad because I can do it with things like nuts and gorgonzola. I don't say cheese because I don't eat most cheese, but I love gorgonzola. And then, you know, of course, the olive oils, the sesame oils, you can make dressings at home. You can do so much with, you know, oil and vinegar. You can do oil and vinegar all day long, right? But the idea is that the greens kind of carry a lot of the fat, and then you're also rounding it out so that you're not relying on your protein source to provide you with the fat calories that you're looking for, right? So obviously there's going to be a certain fat content in some of the proteins that you're eating, but you got to get it in other ways and really diversify with it. But that's the gist of making sure you have the greens when you're on your way. So and here's the thing. Here's what's key. Excuse me. This list, you notice the one thing that's not on this list? I'm not actually eliminating anything from my diet at this point. And the only change I'm really making that's going to affect something that I'm going to have to actually look at my schedule and pay attention to is that low intensity exercise in the morning. I have suggested to people with children, it's good for them too. And you can just go out and play a game of catch if they're old enough to do that. You can go out and just shoot some hoops for a little while. You can, take them with you on the morning walk and turn it into maybe a nature hike or something along those lines. And you'll find that you get that quality hour and you've got this quality family time that you didn't even know existed, because there's a race going on. Got to get to work. On that note, I wasn't really gonna get into this in this episode, but I'll say another thing that falls onto this list of things. Getting in tune with your circadian clock. It's your body clock. It's your rhythm. It's so extremely beneficial. I have had mine. It's a little wonky right now because we are in the middle of winter, and I am finding that I sleep just a little more, and I'm staying up a little bit later and sleeping in. But typically 8 at night to 4 in the morning. I don't have a problem falling asleep. I get good quality sleep. I don't need an alarm clock to wake up. That's probably the number one thing. If I had a flex, I could say I haven't used an alarm clock in almost 10 years for any reason. When you wake up at 4 in the morning, you don't have to worry about being late to work. You don't have to worry about your morning commute. You're not in a hurry. And I know it's hard for people to think of waking up that hour earlier in the morning, but the reset that it can give you in the quality of how your day is going to go is just, it's immeasurable. It's every one of these things has you get positive reinforcement. They all do it. You will get the result. These disciplines give you the result that they say that they are going to give you. So sleep is just, it's on there for sure. Sleep's number 5. I only had 4 on my list, and I was like, this is supposed to be a top 5. Top 5. Number 1, no fail. You will see immediate results. It's important that you understand me when I say you will see results. I do not recommend getting on a scale. Even if you're doing this because you're being, if your doctor is telling you that you need to lose some weight, or if you're like me and it's more of a visual thing and a comfort thing, I want to be able to wear, short sleeves and maybe go to the beach, and so I'm not looking at being, I'm not trying to be a supermodel. I just know that this is my winter coat, and it's gonna have to go sooner or later. So sleep would be number 5, top 5, guaranteed. I would also like to say, if you choose a core routine, I meant to mention this at the beginning. I'm going to try and finish up here. We're going on 40 minutes. Sorry, guys, but it's something I'm pretty passionate about, and this is just the beginning. If you're doing the routine for your hour in the morning, you decide you're going to get on your mat and you're going to do some core work, or you're going to do some balance exercises, or breathing, things along those lines. I read in a Bruce Lee book, they asked him what was his number one most effective discipline for his core strength, because anyone who knows Bruce Lee, I mean, he's just, I mean, his entire body is amazing, but his core, everything radiates from his core. And he said the number one discipline was to do all of your ab and core work on an empty stomach, because basically, like, you're always told to suck your spine down into the floor, like you want it to be as flat as possible to get it stable. But really what's going on is you want your stomach muscles and your spine to, you want your stomach muscles to just suck up to that spine and come together and be this really super solid structure for your back. And that's really what it's about. And that's actually my main motivation for my emphasis being put on my core. My back strength is very important, and my balance. And those two things I actually have to concentrate on. I'm coming from a deficit, and I have to put an emphasis on those things, or they're just going to keep deteriorating. And so the stronger, so think about if you have a full stomach, or you have things in your digestive tract, and you're trying to pull these muscles as close as you can and create the smallest amount of space, and then make those contract and work like this. So, empty stomach. It increased my results, I would say, still to this day. It's actually one of the things I take into consideration if I'm doing something besides my early morning exercise. If I'm planning an afternoon workout routine, I actually think about when I'm going to put something in my stomach versus when I'm going to do core work or do lifting, because it causes the acid reflux, and you don't get the nearly the muscle engagement that you do when you're empty. Okay, thanks for listening, guys. I'm going to play this back and see how I did.